The Mafia boss divorced her, married someone else, until one hospital visit changed everything. Rain hammered the maternity ward windows at 2 in the morning. Owen Calloway sprinted down that corridor with one thought hammering louder than his own heartbeat. His wife was in labor 6 weeks early, and something had gone wrong. The nurse pointed him toward a room. The wrong room. He burst through the door expecting Simone. Instead, he found Mara Reyes, the woman he'd divorced 2 years earlier, pale and exhausted in a hospital bed, holding a 2-year-old boy against her chest. Owen's entire body went still. The boy had his exact eyes, his exact jaw, and Owen had never once known he existed. Subscribe right now and drop your city in the comments, because what happens in the next hour is going to leave you speechless. Like, share, notifications on. You are not ready for this story. 2 years earlier, Owen had stood in the marble foyer of his estate and ended his marriage with the same cold finality he used to close 100 criminal negotiations. Mara had said nothing. She hadn't begged. She hadn't cried in front of him. She'd simply nodded, packed a single suitcase, and walked out through the same front door she'd walked through as a bride 4 years earlier. Owen told himself the marriage had simply run its course. 6 weeks later, he married Simone Voss, daughter of an allied crime family, sealing a territorial alliance his organization's capos had been pushing him toward for 2 years. He told himself it was strategy, business, the kind of decision that kept an empire standing. What Owen never knew, what he still didn't know tonight, sprinting toward what he believed was his wife's hospital room, was that Mara hadn't walked out of that marriage carrying nothing. She'd been standing outside his study that same evening, waiting for the right moment to tell him she was pregnant, when she overheard something that changed everything. Victor Kane's voice, low and careful, speaking into a phone in hushed, practiced tones. A conversation about information moving to a rival family. Details she couldn't fully understand in the moment, delivered with the specific chilling precision of a man discussing betrayal like it was Tuesday's shipping schedule. Mara had stood frozen in that hallway, one hand resting protectively over her stomach, and understood with sudden, terrifying clarity that Owen's own organization harbored a rot deep enough to endanger anyone who carried his blood. She said nothing, not to Owen, not that night, not in the weeks that followed as their marriage dissolved into silence and divorce papers. She packed her suitcase and disappeared into a carefully built anonymous life, choosing isolation over risking her unborn child's safety, choosing single motherhood over trusting a man whose own house, she now understood, was compromised in ways neither of them could yet see. She never reached out, not once in 2 years. Now Owen stood frozen in the doorway of room 314, staring at a woman he hadn't seen since that marble foyer, and a small boy whose face was an unmistakable echo of his own. Mara. His voice came out rough, disbelieving. Mara's eyes lifted to his, exhaustion and shock colliding across her features. Owen, what are you doing here? Owen's gaze dropped to the boy in her arms, small and sleepy, dark hair curling against his forehead, exactly the way Owen's own hair had curled at that age in the one photograph his mother had kept from his childhood. Whose son is that? His voice cracked slightly on the question, though some devastating part of him already understood the answer. Mara's arms tightened protectively around the boy, her exhaustion giving way to something fierce and guarded. Owen, I need you to leave. I'm in the middle of something. There are complications, and I need to focus on Eli right now. Eli. The name landed strangely in Owen's chest, foreign and familiar all at once. How old is he? Mara's silence stretched a beat too long before she answered. 2. Owen's mind raced through the math with brutal, immediate clarity. 2 years old meant conceived before the divorce, meant carried and born entirely without his knowledge, meant Mara had known she was pregnant with his child the exact night he'd ended their marriage in that marble foyer. Is he mine? The question came out barely above a whisper, carrying none of the controlled authority that had defined every other conversation Owen Calloway had ever had in his life. Mara's jaw tightened. 2 years of careful, guarded silence warring visibly with the exhaustion of complications that had brought her to this hospital in the first place. "Owen, this isn't the time. I need to know." Owen crossed the room, despite every instinct telling him to give her space, kneeling beside the bed so he was at eye level with both her and the boy, whose sleepy dark eyes had opened fully now, studying the stranger in the room with the specific unguarded curiosity of a child too young to understand what was actually happening. "Please, Mara. Is he mine?" Mara's composure finally cracked, 2 years of exhaustion and isolation breaking through in a single, devastating breath. Yes. The word landed in the room like something physical, detonating 2 years of separate secrets in the space of a single syllable. Owen's hand found the edge of the hospital bed, steadying himself against a truth that reshaped everything he'd believed about the last 2 years of his life. 2 years. His voice carried genuine anguish now. "You've been raising my son alone for 2 years and you never once told me." Mara's eyes filled with tears. She'd clearly been fighting to hold back, exhaustion and complications making it considerably harder to maintain the guarded composure that had protected her secret for 2 years straight. "I had my reasons, Owen. What reasons could possibly justify this?" Owen's voice cracked between fury and heartbreak, watching his son, study him with innocent, unguarded curiosity that had no idea it was witnessing the collision of 2 years of hidden truth. Before Mara could answer, urgent footsteps sounded in the corridor outside. Dr. Priya Anand appeared in the doorway, her expression carrying the specific professional urgency of someone interrupting a private moment out of genuine necessity. "Mr. Calloway," her voice carried immediate authority, "your wife has delivered. She's asking for you right now." Owen's head snapped toward the doctor, then back to Mara, then down at the small boy still watching him with quiet, uncomplicated curiosity. He was frozen between 2 rooms, 2 women, 2 children he was only just beginning to understand existed in the same devastating hour. Mara's voice, quiet and steady despite everything, cut through his paralysis. "Go, Owen. Simone needs you right now." Owen's eyes held hers for one more agonizing second, the weight of 2 years of separate lives colliding catastrophically in a single hospital corridor. "This isn't over." His voice carried absolute, unshakable finality. "I'm coming back, Mara, and when I do, you're going to tell me everything." He turned and followed Dr. Anand down the corridor, his footsteps echoing against polished linoleum, his mind racing through implications he hadn't even begun to fully process, leaving behind a room where his 2-year-old son watched him disappear with the same quiet, patient curiosity he'd shown since the moment his father walked through the wrong door. Owen followed Dr. Anand down the corridor, with his mind still splitting between 2 rooms, 2 women, 2 children whose existence had detonated inside the same devastating hour. Simone's room came into view, the door propped open, soft lighting replacing the harsh fluorescence of the corridor. She lay propped against pillows, exhausted but radiant, a small bundle wrapped in a hospital blanket cradled against her chest. "Owen." Her voice carried genuine joy despite her exhaustion. "Come meet your daughter." Owen crossed the room mechanically, his expression carrying none of the natural warmth the moment demanded, his mind still processing the small boy 3 doors down, whose face carried his exact features. "She's perfect." Simone's voice held quiet wonder as she adjusted the blanket, revealing a tiny, sleeping face. "I want to name her Rosalind, after my grandmother." Owen nodded, the specific mechanical distraction in his response impossible to fully hide despite his best efforts. "Beautiful." Simone's expression shifted slightly, her joy giving way to confusion as she studied her husband's face. "Owen, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." Owen forced his attention back to his daughter, the genuine warmth he felt for this small, sleeping life warring against the devastating discovery he'd just walked away from. "It's nothing. I'm just overwhelmed," It's been a long night. Simone's confusion deepened, her instincts sharp enough to recognize that something considerably more significant than simple exhaustion was occupying her husband's attention. You seem distant. This is supposed to be one of the happiest moments of our lives. I know. Owen's voice carried genuine strain now. I need a moment. I'll be right back. He excused himself before Simone could press further, stepping into the corridor and pressing his back against the wall, his breathing coming in short, controlled bursts as he processed the impossible weight of the last 30 minutes. He had a son. A 2-year-old son who'd been growing up entirely without him, raised alone by a woman who'd carried that secret through an entire pregnancy and 2 years of single motherhood, rather than telling him the truth. Dr. Anand found him there several minutes later, her expression carrying professional concern. Mr. Calloway, I need to update you on Ms. Reyes's condition. Owen straightened immediately. Is she all right? She's stable, but she's experiencing complications from her delivery that require extended observation. Nothing immediately life-threatening, but she'll need to remain here for several days. Owen's jaw tightened. I need to see her again. Dr. Anand studied him for a moment, her professional composure giving way slightly to genuine curiosity about the clearly complicated situation unfolding in her maternity ward. She's resting now, but you're welcome to visit once she wakes. Owen returned to Simone's room briefly, offering the specific performed warmth he could manage, despite his internal turmoil, staying long enough to hold his daughter and offer Simone reassurance that his distraction was simply exhaustion, rather than anything more significant. He returned to Mara's room 3 hours later. She was awake, Eli asleep against her chest, monitors tracking her vitals with steady, rhythmic beeping that filled the quiet room. You came back. Her voice carried genuine surprise despite everything. I told you I would. Owen settled into the chair beside her bed, his eyes drawn immediately to his sleeping son. Can I hold him? Mara studied Owen's face for a long moment. 2 years of guarded protection warring against the exhaustion and vulnerability of her current circumstances. Carefully, she transferred Eli into Owen's arms with practiced gentleness, the small boy stirring slightly, but not waking fully as he settled against his father's chest for the first time in his entire existence. Owen's breath caught, the specific, overwhelming weight of the moment landing with devastating force. He's beautiful, Mara. His voice carried genuine emotion now, unguarded in a way Mara had rarely witnessed from him even during their marriage. I need you to tell me everything. Why you left without telling me. Why you never reached out in 2 years. Mara's exhaustion gave way to something more resolved, understanding that the conversation she'd avoided for 2 years had finally, inevitably arrived. The night you ended our marriage, I was standing outside your study. I was going to tell you I was pregnant. Owen's expression carried genuine devastation. I never knew you were there. I heard Victor on the phone. Mara's voice carried the specific, careful precision of someone recounting a memory she'd turned over countless times across 2 years. He was talking to someone about information moving to a rival family. I didn't understand everything he said, but the way he said it, Owen. It wasn't business as usual. It was betrayal. Owen went completely still, Eli still sleeping peacefully against his chest. What exactly did you hear? Details about operations, timing, things that made me understand, with absolute certainty, that someone inside your organization was working against you. Mara's eyes held his, exhausted but unflinching. I was pregnant, Owen. I couldn't bring a child into a world where the man's own house was compromised from within. I didn't know who to trust, including you, because I didn't know if you were somehow part of it or completely blind to it. Owen's jaw tightened, 2 years of unknown danger reframing itself with devastating clarity. So you disappeared instead of telling me. I disappeared to protect our son from a threat I didn't fully understand and couldn't risk exposing him to. Mara's voice carried genuine conviction despite her exhaustion. I raised him alone because alone felt safer than trusting an organization I'd just learned was compromised. Owen absorbed the weight of that explanation, understanding beginning to crystallize alongside genuine heartbreak at 2 years of separation. Neither of them had chosen freely. Victor Kane. His voice carried controlled, dangerous precision now. You're certain it was him? Positive. I'd know his voice anywhere. Owen's mind raced through 15 years of trusting his consigliere completely. Every major decision, every piece of counsel Victor had provided suddenly requiring devastating re-examination. Did he mention who he was talking to? Any names? Mara's expression shifted, the specific, careful recall of a detail she'd buried for 2 years finally surfacing. He said a name, just once, near the end of the call, someone he called by a first name only. Owen's entire body tensed. What name? Mara's eyes held his, the weight of what she was about to say settling heavily between them. Simone. The room went completely silent except for the steady rhythm of monitors and Eli's soft, sleeping breath. Owen's face drained of all color, the specific, devastating pieces assembling themselves with horrifying speed. His wife. The mother of the daughter he'd held just hours earlier. The territorial alliance his organization's capos had pushed him toward 2 years ago, 6 weeks after his divorce from Mara. Owen. Mara's voice carried genuine alarm now, watching her ex-husband's expression collapse into something considerably darker than shock. What's wrong? Owen's hands tightened protectively around his sleeping son, the specific horrifying realization crashing over him with devastating force. The woman I married 6 weeks after our divorce. His voice came out barely above a whisper. Her name is Simone. Owen sat frozen in the chair beside Mara's bed, his son still cradled against his chest, the devastating weight of that single name detonating everything he'd believed about the last 2 years of his life. Mara watched his expression collapse through disbelief into something considerably darker. Owen, are you certain that's the same Simone? I need to be certain. His voice carried controlled, dangerous precision now, the specific quality that had built an empire across 15 years of never once letting emotion compromise a decision. He carefully transferred Eli back into Mara's arms, his hands lingering a moment longer than necessary against his son's small frame before he stood. I need to make some calls. Owen stepped into the corridor, his phone already in hand, dialing Marcus Chen, his most trusted remaining lieutenant, with fingers that carried none of their usual steady control. Marcus, I need you to pull every record connecting the Voss family organization to any pattern of information leaks over the past 2 years. Shipment interceptions, territorial disputes, anything that seemed like bad luck but might actually be deliberate sabotage. Marcus's voice carried immediate alertness on the other end. Boss, what's happening? Just do it. Tonight. I need answers within hours, not days. Owen ended the call and stood in the hospital corridor, his mind racing through 15 years of decisions he'd made, based on Victor Kane's counsel, decisions that had shaped his entire organization's trajectory. The timeline assembled itself with brutal, methodical clarity. Mara overhearing that conversation the exact night he'd ended their marriage, his own marriage to Simone 6 weeks later, driven by his organization's capos pushing him toward exactly this kind of territorial alliance. A decision he'd believed was strategic strength that might have actually been the precise culmination of a conspiracy set in motion before he'd even fully committed to ending his first marriage. He returned to Mara's room, finding her awake, Eli nursing quietly against her chest, her exhausted eyes tracking his controlled fury. What did you find? Nothing yet, but I've started an investigation that should give us answers within days. Owen settled back into the chair, his voice carrying genuine urgency now. I need you to think carefully. Is there anything else you remember from that call? Any other details, no matter how small? Mara's brow furrowed with concentration, pulling at a memory she'd deliberately buried for 2 years. He mentioned something about port shipments, timing information, and he said something about making sure the wedding happened on schedule. Owen's jaw tightened. The wedding. My wedding to Simone. It sounded like he was coordinating something, making sure everything aligned properly. Owen's hands curled into fists, the specific, devastating clarity of understanding crashing over him in waves. Marcus called back within 3 days, his voice carrying the specific, grim urgency of a man delivering confirmation Owen had been dreading. "Boss, it's worse than we thought." Owen stood in his private study, the same room where Mara had overheard that fateful conversation 2 years earlier. Phone pressed hard against his ear. "Tell me everything. Financial records connecting Victor Kane to Voss family accounts going back considerably longer than 2 years. Nearly a decade, boss. Communication patterns that match precisely with major operational decisions you made based on his counsel." Marcus's voice carried genuine gravity. Every territorial dispute that resolved in the Voss family's favor over the past decade. Every shipment interception that seemed like bad luck. It wasn't luck. It was Victor feeding them exactly what they needed to know, exactly when they needed to know it. Owen's grip on the phone tightened. "And the marriage. The timeline lines up exactly with your divorce and remarriage. The Voss family had been positioning Simone specifically for this alliance for years before your organization's capos ever suggested it to you. They didn't just capitalize on an opportunity, boss. They engineered it." Owen ended the call and sat in silence for a long moment, the full, devastating scope of a decade-long betrayal settling over him with crushing weight. Simone herself received a call that same evening from her father, her expression shifting from confusion into genuine alarm as she listened to instructions delivered in clipped, urgent tones. Owen found her afterward, holding their daughter in the private suite she'd been moved to following her delivery, her composure cracking visibly the moment their eyes met. "Owen, I need to explain something." Her voice carried genuine fear now, stripped of the practiced warmth that had defined every previous interaction between them. "I think you already know." Owen's voice carried controlled devastation. "Your family's organization, Victor Kane, the information moving between them for years." Simone's tears fell freely now, their daughter stirring slightly in her arms at the sudden tension in the room. "I didn't know everything, Owen, I swear to you. My family raised me to marry well, to secure alliances. I didn't know the full scope of what Victor was doing, or that our marriage was engineered this deliberately. But you knew something. I knew my family wanted this alliance desperately. I knew there were people inside your organization who made things easier for us. I didn't ask questions I probably should have asked." Simone's voice broke completely. "I'm not innocent, Owen, but I'm not the architect of this either. I was positioned, just like you were manipulated into believing your marriage to me was strategic strength." Owen studied his wife's face, searching for the specific truth beneath 2 years of practiced composure, finding genuine anguish that complicated the clear villainy he'd expected to find. Victor Kane's confrontation happened that same night. Owen's most trusted advisor for 15 years, finally facing evidence Marcus had assembled with methodical, devastating precision. Victor's careful composure cracked entirely under the weight of financial records and communication patterns that left no room for denial. "You've been feeding the Voss family information for nearly a decade." Owen's voice carried none of his usual controlled authority, replaced by something considerably more dangerous. Victor's shoulders sagged. 15 years of trusted service collapsing into devastating confession. It started small, information that seemed insignificant, but they kept asking for more, and by the time I understood how deep I was, there was no way out that didn't end with my own death. "You endangered my organization, my family, my son, who spent 2 years hidden because his mother overheard exactly what you were doing." Owen's voice carried genuine, controlled fury now. Victor's expression carried genuine horror at that specific detail. "I didn't know about a son. I swear, Owen, I never once—" Marcus burst into the room before Victor could finish, his expression carrying urgent, devastating alarm. "Boss, we have a serious problem. The Voss family knows their infiltration has been exposed. They're moving immediately to eliminate every loose end connected to this conspiracy." Owen's blood went cold. "What does that mean specifically?" "It means Simone, for her perceived failure in maintaining the marriage's cover." Marcus's voice carried genuine dread now. "And it means Mara and Eli. The Voss family just learned about your son's existence, and they understand exactly what that timeline reveals about their own conspiracy if it ever becomes public. Owen's entire body went rigid, the specific horrifying realization crashing over him that both his infant daughter and his 2-year-old son were now in mortal danger simultaneously, threatened by the exact betrayal that had already stolen 2 years of his son's existence from him. Owen's response carried none of his usual careful calculation. Full lockdown, both hospital rooms. Now, his voice carried absolute, unshakable authority as Marcus relayed instructions through his earpiece. Security personnel converging on the maternity ward within minutes. The specific coordinated efficiency of an organization mobilizing with complete priority around 2 children who existed because of the same devastating conspiracy. Owen moved to Mara's room first, finding her already alert despite her exhaustion, Eli sleeping peacefully beside her. They know about him. Owen's voice carried genuine urgency. The Voss family knows Eli exists, and they understand exactly what his timeline reveals about their conspiracy. Mara's exhaustion gave way immediately to sharp, focused alertness. 2 years of isolated vigilance, raising her son alone, activating instincts that proved instrumental in the crisis unfolding around them. What do you need from me? Anything you remember? Patterns, details from your 2 years of hiding that might help anticipate how they'll try to reach us. Mara's mind raced through 2 years of careful anonymity, specific memories crystallizing with sudden clarity. There was a car, 3 months ago, outside my apartment building. I thought it was nothing at the time, but it circled the block twice before driving away, and a delivery man who came to my door, asking questions that seemed too specific for a simple package delivery. Marcus, monitoring the conversation through his earpiece, immediately cross-referenced the details against surveillance patterns his team had been tracking. That matches reconnaissance methodology we've seen the Voss family use before. They've likely had eyes on her location for months, waiting for the right moment. Owen's jaw tightened at the confirmation that his son had been under surveillance for months without his knowledge, danger circling closer than he'd ever imagined possible. The Voss family's operatives moved on the hospital 40 minutes later, believing they'd identified a vulnerable window during the chaos of 2 simultaneous deliveries and heightened security confusion. They found nothing resembling vulnerability. Owen's organization, fully mobilized and specifically prepared because of Mara's careful observations, intercepted the operatives before they reached anywhere near either hospital room. The confrontation unfolded with devastating precision in the parking structure below, brutal and decisive, leaving no ambiguity about which organization actually controlled the outcome of this conspiracy's final desperate gambit. The threat was neutralized completely within the hour. Victor Kane's fate resolved with the specific brutal finality the world Owen operated in demanded. A decade of betrayal finally, permanently answered for, in ways that ensured no further damage could ever be done to the organization he'd spent years quietly undermining. The Voss family's organization collapsed entirely in the following days, their infiltration exposed, their conspiracy unraveling under evidence Marcus had assembled with methodical precision, their attempt to eliminate loose ends becoming instead the exact catalyst that ended their criminal enterprise permanently. Simone's own fate resolved with complicated justice. Owen's investigation, combined with Marcus's careful assessment, revealed genuine evidence that she'd been positioned and raised by her family without full awareness of the marriage's true engineered purpose. A pawn in a conspiracy considerably larger than her own understanding, rather than an active architect of the betrayal. Owen formally separated from her within weeks, ensuring their daughter's safety and future through careful legal arrangements that prioritized the child's well-being above any lingering resentment between the adults who'd created her under such devastating circumstances. I never wanted to hurt anyone. Simone's voice carried genuine sorrow during their final conversation, her daughter sleeping peacefully in the nursery beside them. I know that now. Owen's voice carried none of his earlier fury, replaced by something considerably more measured. But we both built something on a foundation neither of us fully chose. Our daughter deserves better than staying trapped in that same foundation. Weeks passed following the conspiracy's complete resolution, both children finally safe, the specific danger that had shaped the last 2 years of Owen's life permanently eliminated. Owen navigated the complicated reality of 2 families existing because of the same devastating conspiracy with careful, deliberate patience. His relationship with Mara rebuilt slowly, built around genuine effort, rather than any assumption that 2 years of separation could simply be erased by good intentions alone. He visited Eli every day the hospital allowed, learning the specific rhythms of a 2-year-old's needs and moods, with the patient dedication of a father determined to make up for lost time, without ever pretending the lost time hadn't happened at all. Mara's own guarded walls came down gradually, understanding finally settling over her that the danger she'd spent 2 years protecting Eli from had been real, specific, and now permanently resolved. Her isolation was no longer necessary, in a world where Owen's organization had completely eliminated the exact threat she'd overheard being engineered against them both 2 years earlier. Months later, Owen sat in Mara's apartment on an ordinary evening, Eli asleep between them on the couch, after a day that carried none of the danger and secrecy that had defined the previous 2 years of their lives. His infant daughter Rosalind visited for the weekend under a careful, evolving custody arrangement with Simone that prioritized the children's safety and stability above any lingering complications between the adults who'd created them under such devastating circumstances. I spent 15 years building an empire designed to protect itself from every external threat. Owen's voice carried genuine, unguarded reflection as he watched his son sleep peacefully between them, never once realizing the most devastating vulnerability had been sitting inside my own trusted circle the entire time. Mara studied him for a long moment, 2 years of careful isolation finally giving way to something resembling genuine peace. And now I understand that finding my son taught me more about genuine protection than any territorial alliance ever could. Owen's hand found Eli's small, sleeping form, the specific, quiet certainty of a father who finally understood exactly what mattered most, settling over him completely. Mara's own hand found Owen's across the space between them, 2 years of separate secrets finally, completely resolved into something that resembled genuine hope for whatever came next. The apartment around them carried none of the danger that had once defined every corner of their separate, isolated lives. It simply carried something considerably more valuable. A family, finally, completely whole. If this story kept you holding your breath from that wrong hospital room to this quiet evening, if it reminded you that the truth always finds its way home eventually, subscribe right now because we are not finished. Share this with someone who needs it today. Like this video, drop your city below, and turn on notifications because the next story is already loaded, and you are not ready for what's coming.